Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to welcome you to our special lecture today by Professor Hyun Bok of Seoul National University. Professor Lee has been the leading and outstanding supervisor of our USJ, working for us for many years. Professor Lee graduated from Seoul National University, received a Master of Arts in Phonetics from London University, and was awarded his doctoral degree also by London University. And Dr. Lee has been visiting professor at Tokyo University and Warsaw University in Poland. Professor Lee is president of PSK, Phonetics Society of Korea, and vice president of the Linguistic Society of Korea. Dr. Lee is president of the Oriental Society of Korea and director of Korean English Speech Academy, and also advisory committee member for Korean Broadcasting Station, KBS. Professor Lee has a lot of publications, author of about 20 books, including Korean Grammar, Oxford University Press, Korean Standard Pronunciation, Seoul, Korean Standard Pronouncing Dictionary, Seoul National University Press, Listening and Pronunciation in English, Phonetics and Linguistics, Seoul National University Press, and also 300 papers on phonetics, linguistics, and language teaching, etc. Also, Dr. Lee has visited many countries and traveled throughout the world for his research, fieldwork, and teaching phonetics and linguistics. In 1999, Queen Elizabeth II awarded to Professor Lee an honorary CBE, Commander of the Order of the British Empire, during her royal visit to Seoul, Korea, for his great service in the field of British English, culture, and English phonetics in the land of morning calm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Lee's title for today's lecture is What is Wrong with Japanese English? Let's read Professor Lee with hearty applause.
If I may, I would like to talk sitting. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lee, H. Lee from Seoul, as introduced by Suzuki Kaicho. Thank you for your good introduction. The title of my talk today is A Phonetic Roadmap for Better Pronunciation, or alternatively, What is Wrong with Japanese English? I wish I could change the title into What is Right with Japanese English, if I can. The Machino Sensei this morning has drawn a rather optimistic picture to my mind about the Japanese English, and I hope he could have success with his methodology. Most of his suggestions, I think I entirely agree with. And in fact, he has broadened my future scope. The purpose of my talk today is to draw a kind of practical roadmap, as it were, for Japanese English or Japanese learners of English. There are a number of pronunciation errors, some of them more serious than others, typically made by Japanese speakers learning and speaking English. This talk is on the basis of the observations I've made for the past, well, almost over 30 years, I should say. Friends, Japanese friends I met all over the world, England, Asia, Poland, and so on, and also some of Japanese students doing degree work in my Department of Phonetics, Department of Linguistics, Seoul National University. I have already given a series of lectures in many cities of Japan in a similar topic for the past, I think, 10 to 15 years. The conclusion I've come to is this: simply pointing out the difficulties encountered by Japanese speakers of English is not enough. Is not enough. And furthermore, theory alone can't get you any far in learning and teaching English pronunciation. What we now really need to do to help Japanese speakers of English is to give them practical tips which can guide them to the goal. In other words, a step-by-step practical roadmap is now badly needed. Today I'll try and point out 3 most common pronunciation errors made by Japanese speakers of English and suggest some tips for them to follow, if they want to, that is. And these are: 1, vowels, already well covered by other speakers, including Matsuno Sensei this morning. Vowel insertion and resyllabification. It's also talked about to a certain extent, I think. Weak forms and stress and rhythmic patterns. Let me quote the dialogue I had with a lady customs officer at the Nagoya airport a few years ago. I'm quoting it again. The lady officer said the following 2 sentences to me, and I couldn't understand the meaning of the second sentence for a long time until I asked her to repeat the sentence several times, to her embarrassment. She said something like, you can see on the screen, baggage here, please. Baggage here, please. It was all right. I readily understood. And then she said, very good-looking, charming lady she was. She said, "What is your purpose? What is your purpose?" Well, I can make out the first part up to, say, is you are. Up to that part, it's all right. But I couldn't really understand the last 3 syllables. Purpose. So I asked her 2-3 times to repeat, searching my head. What possible, sequence syllables it could be. These 2 sentences uttered by the lady officer eloquently exemplify, I think, the typical English pronunciation, mispronunciation made by Japanese speakers in general. In fact, these are the problems I'm going to deal with in this paper. I would make comments here and there to the problems faced by Koreans in learning English as well. Despite the striking similarity between Korean and Japanese in overall grammatical structure, they are practically the same in grammatical terms. The phonetic difficulties encountered by Koreans and Japanese in speaking English are by no means the same. In fact, Koreans are in a slightly better position than Japanese speakers, I think, who find it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get the English vowels and speech rhythm right. Of course, there are other difficulties related to consonants, intonation, and so on. But I'll concentrate on these vowels and rhythmic problems. Then first, vowels. Let me hasten to present the following table, which shows the vowel inventory of English, Korean, and Japanese. We can get a good picture here of the kind of phonetic correspondence we can expect among the three languages. Now, if you look at this chart carefully, the English, followed by Korean and Japanese. In the table, the italic symbol, or the underlined symbols, represent the Korean and Japanese vowels, which are phonetically quite similar to the corresponding English vowels, whereas those in brackets only rough equivalents, which are habitually substituted by the Korean and Japanese speakers. Thus, only 5 Japanese vowels, I, E, O, U, A, are phonetically very close to the corresponding English ones. On the other hand, we can see that as many as 9 Korean vowels show close correspondence to English. Now, let's look at the table in a little more detail. The number one vowel, seed, it's underlined in Korean and Japanese. So, the problem is not too great. But coming to number 2, the vowel as in sit, both Korean and Japanese encounter difficulties. They are problematic. Number 3, set, the vowel air, they are both underlined in Korean and Japanese. So we are very comfortable. Coming to number 4, as in sat, I underlined the Korean a there, because in standard Korean we do have a, in contrast to e, closer one. But in the case of Japanese, there's no such distinction, as you know, phonologically, to begin with. So, Japanese a is a great problem for most Japanese people, I should think. I've met many Japanese school teachers and professors in the universities, doing linguistics, phonetics, English, and so on. But unfortunately, I haven't met, frankly, many, Japanese scholars or teachers, professors, who could manage to, produce this sound rightly. This will be dealt with in detail later. Number 5 vowel, card, as in R, card, or hard. Well, both Korean and Japanese are not underlined, meaning they are problematic. Coming to 6, cot. Well, we have in Korean unrounded back, half-open vowel corresponding to the cardinal, secondary cardinal 6, which is quite similar to this, although it's unrounded. English is rounded. Interestingly, John Wells, my old friend, almost 40-year friend from UCL, he holds, a card written in Korean on one side and in English, of course, on the other. You can ask him to show it to you later if you want to. And there, in the Korean, part, he transcribes the word university, college, the number 6 vowel, using Korean O, the Korean letter there, that letter, which I think is very dead correct. I'm asking my students to use Korean O in words like Oxford, college, and so on, if they find it difficult to lip round their lips. Without lip rounding, it can be still, usable. But in the case of Japanese, there's no underlying problem. Japanese O is much higher. So you would normally say Oxford. American English might be a good substitute for you, because they wouldn't say Oxford but Oxford. Number 7, port. Well, both underlined. Well, we are very happy here. Number 8, full. Korean is not underlined, and it's very difficult for Koreans to produce this sound, you see. Whereas Japanese is quite close to this English short oo. So you can freely use Japanese oo for English vowel full. 9, full. It's other way around. Korean is happy, whereas Japanese are unhappy. In most cases, your pronunciation like fool or food is too low and forward, as in furu, fudo, food. Number 10, cut. Well, there's a difference between American and British. There's a typical British pronunciation, British sound. Cut. Well, we are both happy, no problem at all. Japanese can use a, and we can use a. Number 11, the curd, bean curd, Well, those Koreans who can manage a standard Korean pronunciation, they can, easily use Korean as in bird, meaning bee, flying bee. But the younger generation, the younger boys and girls, I hardly pronounce, they don't use these sounds these days. So, this is only for the age-old people, standard speakers. Japanese, no. I think this is one of the most serious vowels for Japanese. Most serious, and I mean, utterly impossible to get it out right. And I want to demonstrate later on how to correct your students, when they fail to pronounce this. I would like to invite any volunteers to come forward to do some job with me. So Japanese has serious problem on this vowel. Number 12 is, it goes, it has the same sort of quality as number 11. Varies, a little depending on the position, in the word, but basically the same, I would think. Korean can use the English teachers, the native English teachers working in Korea. For instance, British Council, provide us with English native teacher for the annual English workshop for Korean school teachers held by, Linguistics Department, Seoul. And one of the teacher, British teacher, the Englishman, has told me recently that I think English number 12, the short, unstressed is best represented by Korean that's Korean vowel. So I said, well, I can't agree more. You're quite right. Japanese, what about Japanese? Again, you use a vowel there, so no difference. Let's deal with the one or two, especially, difficult vowels. The English a, as in cat, typically pronounced by, Japanese. Not the people in this room, I'm sure, but the beginners, for instance, and ordinary people, ordinary Japanese will certainly pronounce this as katto, katto, mad, mado, have you, land, lando. Now, failing to get the sound and right, they'd better use a vowel rather than a in such words, and their pronunciation would sound more intelligible. But they don't do this. I don't know why. See? Rather than katto, ketto would sound better, nearer to English, I'm sure. But why katto? Ketto would do. Mado, instead of mado, medo would be better. Now, I give advice 1. Learn by heart the cardinal vowel number 3. Well, you can't force all students to, master cardinal vowel system, but teachers should know about this. Or to pronounce a with the thumb and index finger inserted between the upper and lower teeth. And that, gesture, you can ask the students to try a, and very likely to get the right sound, a. The next one, number 11 vowel, which is realized as a in Japanese. Yet another widespread mispronunciation. noticeable in Japanese English. Each vowel, which is a long central vowel, is replaced by an open vowel, as I said earlier. So, curb wa kabo ni narimasu. Bird wa babo. Learn wa learn. There's no difference in Japanese English. Learn and run. Both pronounced as ran. Ran. Now, the advice too here would be, the purpose appears here. Turn, turn. Pronounce the open vowel ah with the mouth almost closed and upper and lower teeth coming together. Any volunteer to come forward so that I can do some manipulation, the way I do in my class. If not, I'll invite Mr. Kamiya-san. Please come forward. Mr. Kamiya is a lecturer in Senshu University. Right? 違いますか? どうも. And he's been working very hard, you see, on English intonation, and so on. During my, the conversations with him, I sometimes noticed the mispronunciation. So, if you don't mind, I'll use this, international conference. I'll try and help you get out this vowel number 11 and vowel number 4. Was it? A? Right. I hope for good, not just today. Okay, let's stand up and do the job. Face the audience. Relax. No point, in getting tense. This is a waribashi desho. The one I used during lunch, I brought it especially for this purpose. But I washed it. 洗ってますから. Now, put it in your mouth and hold it between your two lips, upper and lower, and upper teeth and lower teeth. Gently, not too hard. And relax. 力は全然入れないでくださいね. Just complete relaxation. And I want you to just produce sounds. Don't think of any vowel, any particular vowel. Just relax and gently pronounce, a sound. We don't know what sound will come out. Just say something. Just vibrate your vocal cords and say something. That's it. This is number 12 vowel. This morning, the Matsuno Sensei has introduced a very interesting technique. The putting elbow under the 下じゃなくてこれなんだ。はい、jaw. The principle is the same, isn't it? You see, Japanese tend to open their mouth too wide for this sound. Do it again, please. I'm now going to take, this chopstick out of your mouth. And so keep the mouth just as before and say the same sound. That's it. Now, could you now add T after that? T.
T.
Yes.
T.
T. T. T sound.
T.
No. T sound added to the vowel you have just learned.
It.
That's it.
F.
Now, this time, start with an H sound and end with an T sound, as you've just done, using the vowel, the same vowel.
Had.
Good. Again.
Had.
Again.
Had.
That's it. That's 12 vowel. Number 11 vowel. This is the first time I've ever heard you pronounce this sound. Please remember the muscular sensation. Very carefully. Remember what you've done. Read again.
Had.
Okay. Now you tend to say university. University College, London. University じゃなくて using this vowel, university. That's it. Good. Well, we need the applause, So, the truth is near you see. Truth is actually lives with you every day, day and night. But you don't know how to find it, how to use it. That's why. You just fall into the old habit of Japanese vowels. That's why. You should try and explore new road leading to the mountain, as in hiking. Forget the trodden path, which people use every day, to climb the mountain. We have to try and find out a different road leading to proper English sound, English vowel. Let's check if Kamea-san has forgotten, what he has learned without his chopstick in his mouth. Please say.
Had.
Good.
Had. University.
Excellent. One more. We started off with vowel A, didn't we? Yeah, vowel A. This is again replaced by Japanese by A, as I said. So Japanese has a very heavy load, you see, in speaking English. It's used for it's used for short number 12 it's used for and it's also used for number 10 which is quite correct. It's also used for cart, car, the back vowel is also replaced by So 4 to 5 vowels are merged into one into Japanese and which make foreigners, ill at ease, very difficult to decipher what he, the Japanese, or the girl, is talking about. Now, let's just demonstrate one more, the A vowel. I said, what did I say there to correct it? Either learn cardinal vowel number 3 by heart. When you can manage to produce cardinal number 3, you can easily modify it by slightly opening your jaw wider. Otherwise, mobilize your thumb and index finger, insert it between the upper and lower teeth, like that. Like that. But mind you, be careful to your tip of the tongue should preferably touch the lower teeth, you see, to keep it moving backward. Tip of tongue touching the underneath of the lower teeth. And then say, Well, you can't miss it. Well, let's try. Open it. One other important secret tip I use is the muscle underneath the jaw. When you properly pronounce English or Korean they are quite similar, you see. The muscle underneath the jaw is getting very stiff, and it's coming down considerably. If you touch my tongue, the neck, see what happens when I produce this okay? Cat. Katto じゃなくて cat. Cat. Catch. You have to place it this way. Cat. As against number 3. Care. Bread. And bad. What do you hear? Do you hear any difference? Do you feel any difference? Tell them. What sort of, difference did you feel? You found the difference?
Yes.
Tell them, either in Japanese or English.
Okay, so it's difficult to explain in English in detail, so let me explain in Japanese. 少し、
固まって、
かなり硬くなります。ここ一気に硬く
そして下に
硬く、一気にそれもいきなりすごい勢いで硬くなって下にさ。
Now you try this. Two fingers in. And this should come down further. Almost. Okay. I don't torture you anymore. Okay, thank you very much. How much time do I have now?
15 minutes.
15. Okay. Now I'll skip the rest of the vowel parts and also the vowel insertion, the resyllabification thing will be out. I'll concentrate for the rest of the time on rhythmic patterns. Rhythmic pattern. Can you find the right page? Yes. Well, D. Jones has already pointed out, long time ago, in his outline, the difficulty the Japanese speakers experience with the English rhythm in his book, Outline. He said, the greatest difficulty of all is experienced by the Japanese. For them, and all others to whom rhythm is difficult, it will be found helpful if the teacher taps the rhythms of sentences with his finger on the table. Well, the pupil should practice saying the sentence while tapping in unison with the teacher. Good demonstration was made by Matsuno Sensei yesterday with the rubber band, you see. I think it was very good, the methods. The difficulty lies, no doubt, in what they call syllable-timed rhythm that the Japanese speakers are accustomed to in speaking their native language. It is important for them to realize the stress-timed rhythm of English is very different from the Japanese speech rhythm. And Jones used the English sentence, the famous one by now, he wrote to the secretary, to contrast French rhythms and English rhythms. I've added Korean and Japanese versions as follows. First, English, he wrote to the secretary, was slightly different from the one given in his book, but it doesn't really matter. He wrote to the secretary. Two stresses are important. In American English, there may be three. He wrote to the secretary. Anyhow, there's a, strong, weak, long, short. The syllables coming together, weaving a typical English speech rhythm. Korean would, I think, Korean students, for instance, they would say the sentence, he wrote to the secretary. He wrote to the secretary, or secretary, imitating American speech. French, well, this is the one given by Jones. Il wrote to the secretary. Il wrote to the secretary. The same length and same stress given to each syllable. It's like marching on by soldiers. Dun, 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 dun. Japanese, what about Japanese speakers? How would they manage this? Well, practically the same as French. He wrote to the secretary. He wrote to the secretary. There are two important points worth noting here. There are two stressed syllables surrounded by unstressed ones in English, whereas the syllables are all evenly stressed, unmarked, in French and Japanese. And number of syllables increases in French and Japanese too. It is quite clear from this that Japanese and French speakers share the same sort of rhythmic difficulty in speaking English. For a start, let me talk about the technique I use, the terminology I employ to tackle this problem. I've given a thought to this problem for a long time, and about 20 years ago, this is the result I came up with. I mark the stress syllable or long syllable as tongue, T-A-N-G. I call it, I coined this term, tongue. Well, phonetically, this is bound to be strong and long. It's an initial syllable, final syllable, and the vowel is wide open, so it's tongue. And the weak syllable is represented by di. So it's tongue, di. If there's more than one D, then we can do it tongue di. But what about the other variety? The tongue di would be the alternative, the other type of rhythm, you see. Weak, strong, weak. These two patterns are extensively used in English. I'm sure you all know, familiar with the iambic or dactyl in English poetry. Iambic is the tongue, in a way, the tongue, weak, strong, or short, long. And dactyl is strong, weak, isn't it? Or long, short. So one can introduce this pattern into teaching English. For instance, the tongue di rhythm, well, by the way, I also use this technique to teach proper Korean rhythm to students, you see. Because Korean rhythm, to my mind, is about 70% close to English type of rhythm. If English is 100, and Korean is 70. Standard Korean. it varies from, dialect to dialect. The Gyeongsang southern dialect and northern dialect, these have, the rhythmic pattern rather similar to syllable time, like French and Japanese. But Standard Korean spoken in a Seoul area is rather close to English. For instance, Tangdi or Tangdi could be exemplified by Sunday. Sunday, Tangdi, Saturday, Tangdi, 3 syllable. Whereas July, Didang, isn't it? July. And September, Didangdi, is realized as Didangud. Musical approach is strongly recommended. For instance, singing a well-known song coming through the rye can be a very helpful exercise in mastering the 2 different rhythmic patterns. You see, the point is, Japanese national anthem, which is called Kimigayo. Kimigayo was supposed to be composed by the first national court, the royal court bandmaster, who was an Englishman. I forget his name. He composed this melody, you see, for Japanese national anthem, which goes like Kimigayo wa. Well, what kind of rhythm is it? Syllabic time, syllable time rhythmistic. Dun dun di 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 di. It's not di 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 di. Not that. So I don't know why this Englishman has, used this kind of rhythm introduced in composing Japanese national anthem. I don't know. Perhaps two interpretations affected by the British national anthem, which goes also like this. Da 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 da. God save her gracious Queen. God save her. What is it? John. Noble Queen. God save the Queen. Da 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 da. And so on. So slightly, there's more variation in the case of British national anthem in Japanese. Japanese is more faithful to this da 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 da. Second interpretation, I think he was quite familiar with Japanese speech rhythm, and he perhaps modeled, his composition on it. Next one, please. I said the Scottish tune coming through the rye. This I use very often in my phonetics class in Seoul. See, and I think it's dead useful for Japanese students to get used to the English type of rhythm. 아니, 전에 그 아까 악보하고 있는 거. 그 전에 악보. The coming through the rye goes like this. Perhaps most of you know. Da-dun, 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 da-da-dun. Dun, 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 dun. If a body meet a body coming through the rye, if a body meet a body, kiss a body, need a body cry. Every lassie had a laddie, nay, they say, yet all the lads they smile on me when this is the music score. What's about next? The other one. Yes. If you scan this lyric, X represents strong, syllable. On this particular music score, it's not. If in normal speech is not really stressed, if you go, not if you go, but here it's stressed, and then long. Whereas the simple line, represents weak syllable. So it's if, tongue, the body. Now, the word body in English has a stress on the first syllable, bo, right? So you should, in normal speech, if a body should be like that. But in this particular music, it's if a body violating the regular pattern of ordinary speech. Meter body is alright, meter body, again, violation. Coming, well, it's also wrong in normal speech. Coming, I'm coming, not I'm coming. Coming through the right. So the third line represents the normal speech, rhythmic pattern. And so on. And the next one. Kasa. Well, that's the lyric of this song. John Wells did a very nice job yesterday, sort of scanning, telling us where to put the stress or the nucleus and so on. Perhaps we can do this using this type of sentence. The point I'm driving at is that introducing musical approach, see, this musical prosodic thing, they don't come very easily, you see, unless you do something special. And that, I think, is deliberately training students with this kind of rhythmic, pattern. Dang, de dang, de dang, de dang. Well, there are very nice presentation speeches made by English colleagues of mine, yesterday and also today. But I think the problem relating to this prosodic things or rhythmic patterns, ultimately boil down to this basic types of, speech rhythm. Whether it's the dang, the or dang, the. At least these two, and this can be developed further by adding weak syllables here and there. Now, this tendency is against the traditional Japanese rhythm pattern, deeply, rooted in the minds of Japanese. That is the problem, see. Frankly speaking, I can't tell you, how much trouble I have in teaching Korean students the vowel length in Korean, see. Again, musical approach is useful there. The long, short, short, long. So, let's face it, if you don't, if you're not ready to do this, well, I wish you could find something else, something useful thing, you see. I failed many times with many students in the past, and that's the reason I stress this musical thing. Well, that's about all I would like to talk to you about. skip to some parts, and there are many other things I should like to elaborate on, but time being limited, I'll stop here. Thank you very much indeed.